Bigfoot Society would like to thank the following sponsors for helping make the podcast possible. The Singular Fortean Society has combined open and honest paranormal investigation and journalism since 2016. Visit the Society at Singular Fortean for all the latest weird news and more. Come with us and investigate the impossible. Lauren Smith is the hostess for Nightcaller's Bigfoot Radio, which has been on air for over a decade and has completed over 300 shows. Lauren brings with her a unique viewpoint given that she is not only the daughter of one of the veteran female Bigfoot researchers in the South, but she has been conducting field research since she was a preteen some 20 years ago. Nightcallers is a Bigfoot world favorite and, along with interviewing researchers and witnesses, often features interviews with guests from the documentary, film, and entertainment industry. Lauren also does a vidcast segment called Nightcallers, which features real encounters sent in by viewers. You can find all of this and more at nightcallersproductions.com. Welcome to the Bigfoot Society Clubhouse, where we discuss a new or old topic in cryptozoology every week. Just hang out and have a good time. I do need to let you know that by hanging out with us on stage and talking, and the discussion, you are giving consent to being recorded, which will be used in a future Bigfoot Society podcast, YouTube video, could be anything that you could imagine coming down the pipeline. If you're not comfortable with that, please go ahead and move on down to the audience. Sit back, relax, have a good time. Again, thanks to all for hanging out, and let's just have a good time. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for coming back to the Bigfoot Society Club on Clubhouse. And welcome if you're listening to this on YouTube or the podcast. Welcome as well. Pretty big milestone was reached today. We actually have a total of 200 combined followers and members in the number one cryptozoology club on Clubhouse. So a very big deal. It's exciting. I've got a lot of people on stage with me today, different panelists. We're going to be talking about instances, mistaken identity cryptids, an instance where a animal was thought of as a cryptid. You'll kind of see as we go along. But I've got a lot of cool people with me on stage. I've got Aleks Petakov, I've got Paul, Ashley, Aaron, Tate, Lisa, Mike. You'll be hearing maybe from others as well as we bring them up on stage. But as you start to share your topic, guys, if you wouldn't mind sharing if you're from a podcast or what it is you're best known for, that would be awesome, so people get some context for who's speaking. I'm going to go ahead and start, and if this is your first episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast, pretty wild one, but so I'm Jeremiah. I'm the host of the Bigfoot Society podcast, and the one the one that I'm focusing on is kind of interesting. So we all know of the jackalope, and so it's a little bunny with big deer antlers, right? And I don't know, to be honest, I don't know if anyone seriously thinks this is a real cryptid. I mean, that they actually exist, because it's actually one of those things, like, I feel that they don't, but I might be stepping on toes big time. So I don't want to start like a big, thing there. But the interesting thing about rabbits, and I learned this actually from Nate Brislin in his discussion that he was having in his Facebook group with Kenzie the other night, is that some rabbits actually get a certain disease, which if you look up photos for it, be forewarned, it is kind of hard to see the cute little bunny rabbits with this disease going on. It's a virus called I'm going to try to say it. Nope, I can't even say it. Papillomatosis. It's also called jackalopism. Pretty much, you have a parasite which causes growths to grow on the rabbit's head that kind of look like they could be antlers-ish if you squint. But that's really an example of how seeing something like that in the wild may have given it may have grown into the jackalope legend. We're not sure, but again, that's the thing that I latched onto. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts about if is there anyone here that views the jackalope as a real animal? I'm just curious about that. I can hear by your silence that no one is gonna say that the jackalope is a real animal. So I think the consensus is that we're thinking not so much. But let's continue with the discussion. I'm gonna pick my bud. It's nice to see Mike here tonight. It's nice to see everyone here tonight. But Mike, it's good to see you here. What do you have to share tonight?
Well, first of all, I apologize for being late. I'm trying to get prep for a outing. So I'm Mike from Tactical Bigfoot Research. I also am the co-host of Where's My Sage, a podcast with Christy London, who's down below. Tonight, I've been looking at some lake monsters, and generally what I'm finding up in my area, things that would be logged in with one specific old greenie, would be the freshwater fish in the pike family. So your pike and your muskellunge. And generally, you'll see them swimming along the surface every so often with their heads out of the water. And they will pack up like a wolf pack. So you end up with many humps on the top of the water. I've seen them pack up. I'm a recovery diver for quite a few years. And while diving, I've seen them pack up together and move around. But a lot of times they hunt different surface life, frogs, small mammals, and ducks, and you'll catch them with their heads out of the water. So sometimes they may get mistaken for some of those larger eel-like type creatures because they are long and thin. They have the triangle teeth that you'll hear, and you get a good muskie or tiger muskie. You're looking for almost like thigh size and girth. So that's kind of what I was looking. I've seen them up and fishing out of the water, and you really got to second guess what you're seeing. And if you get a couple of them in a row, you may end up with humps. So again, that gives you your look, like your Ogopogo or some of your smaller lake monsters. So anyone's thoughts on that, or anybody else besides myself seen pike or muskie swim with their heads out of the water?
Yes, I have.
Mike, how long are these fish usually get? I'm just curious.
You can get some muskie, you can get them up to about 60 inches, and then you're looking at a good 70 pounds or bigger, and they're scattered throughout the world, those upper northern hemispheres, and there's some other species that are kind of similar, but definitely, in North America, you'll end up with a muskie. I mean, Paul probably gives a little more on it. He's the big fisherman. But I've seen some record size, and then if you find a lake that there's some sturgeon in, you may, get that, double take of two different fish working in the same area.
I think, it's crazy. Like, that has come up in a ton of my interviews, is how fish can be, you can think you're looking at a lake monster, but you're actually looking at a huge fish. That's crazy. That's a really good one to bring up. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I will, if we're good, I'll go with...
Looks like you dropped. Mike. That was very suspenseful.
That was incredible. He actually just dropped out of the clubhouse as he was about to choose someone. Okay. Well, let me channel Mike here. Well, who would he have picked? I think he would have picked...
Yeah, maybe we'll give him a minute or so to return.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Something I've heard definitely with some of the Champ stuff as well. Champ, the lake monster, obviously. And Lake Champlain. There are pike in that area. Oh, here he is. Here's Mike.
I'm back.
Good to see you back,
Mike. That was so suspenseful. You were about to say who it was, and then you just dropped off the app.
Technology has not been my friend tonight. I've been trying to set up an infrared camera system for a live investigation we're doing this weekend. I was going to pick Ashley next.
Oh, yay, thank you. So I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive here. Obviously, if people don't know me, my name is Ashley. I'm a Fortean investigator. As far as content goes, I am the co-host of the On Wednesdays We Talk Weird podcast. And as of right now, I'm working on a feature-length documentary about the Mothman. So I figured that's what I would kind of talk about today. So there's a really popular theory that the Mothman could have potentially been a sandhill crane, and that's what people are seeing in the area. Now, I know that there's probably some misconceptions about the Mothman, but he didn't actually look like a moth at all. So I have a very hard time believing that it could have possibly even been a crane, because the descriptions just don't really match up. And like I said, I know that's popular. However, I'm going to bring up something that nobody really talks about, and that is the Stygian Owl. Now, I don't know if you've seen the Stygian Owl. Of course, owls have also been, possibly equated to the Mothman. However, the Stygian Owl specifically, if you look at them, they have, especially in the perfect lighting, they have these really, really scary red eyes, and they really look horrifying. So if you were to see one of these guys in the dark, you could definitely mistake that for something else, especially when you're in a wooded area and maybe it's on top of a tree. Also, owls kind of do their little battle stance, and when they do that, they kind of kick up their rear end a little bit to try to kind of make themselves look bigger, and then they puff out and they'll make these like scary noises at you. But then it also has these glowing red eyes, but it's not just like really a glowing like eye shine. It's like almost like an internal glow. Now, the problem with that could potentially be that, the Stygian Owl it inhabits South America, but that doesn't mean that somebody could not have possibly had this as an exotic pet. We kind of see that a lot in this field, misplaced animals, because people take on these exotic animals. They end up not being able to care for them, and they release them out in the wild. That's why the Burmese python is such an issue down in Florida, is because of instances like those. So it could have possibly been something like that. Either way, I'm sure even in South America, the Stygian Owl has been definitely a prime suspect in some of the interesting sightings and happenstances that they have down there as well. So the Stygian Owl, look it up. I'll share pictures in the Discord.
So Ashley, I haven't heard that one before. That was really cool. If you look up photos of it, it's got like these bright red eyes too, which are super crazy looking.
Yeah, they're scary. I mean, they could definitely be. If I saw that thing at night, I would not go anywhere near it. That's for sure. Especially it's hissing at me and stuff. I guess they don't really hiss, but they kind of do. They make this weird noise. They're horrifying. So stuff of nightmares. Those Stygian owls.
Totally. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. For people that, I'm just going to say real quick, for people that are in the audience that are new, we are talking about mistaken identity cryptids, times where maybe a cryptid ended up being an animal, or an animal could have been the answer for what we're looking at as a cryptid. But if you have thoughts to contribute as we go along, or eventually we'll open it up, if you have a question or discussion about anything, you feel free to raise your hand. But Ashley, who would you like to choose next?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Aaron. I'm really excited. We haven't really had Aaron on one of these yet, so I want to hear what he's got to say.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, man. Thank you, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, dude.
I've been having microphone issues. Okay. So, first of all, it is an honor and a privilege to be on a panel with these titans of industry in the paranormal community. So thank you all. But I picked the Wolfman, or the Dogman, or the werewolf or the rougarou or the wolver or whichever label you like for the humanoid canine for this topic when it slid across the table. Because short of Sasquatch, in the last 2 years that I've been doing really deep research into the paranormal and the unknown, nothing has come across my radar more often than the werewolf or the shapeshifter or really the humanoid canine. And I really latched on to the Beast of Bray Road just because it's such a well-documented case. There's so many sightings. Should I summarize that real quick, or is everybody here generally familiar with the Beast of Bray Road?
I mean, if you want to give a really short summary, that's all right.
Super short. So the Beast of Bray Road is generally described as a werewolf-like creature, and those are air quotes, that appeared in and around the area of Elkhorn, Wisconsin, really going back as far as possibly the 1920s, and as recently as the 2020s. Like, there are sightings as recently as 2020 of a bipedal, humanoid-looking canine creature in and around Elkhorn, Wisconsin, or that general area. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I was doing research into trying to prove that werewolves are maybe possibly real, just based on our topic for tonight. But I feel like you could flip this the other way. Because the Beast of Bray Road, you have multiple sightings from independent witnesses over a long period of time, going back as far as the 1920s, as recently as the 2000s. And you just have to ask yourself, how many times can people make the same mistake? How many times can people look at a moose or a dog or a bear and mistake it for a quote-unquote werewolf? Which is really what kind of got me onto this topic in the first place. It's just the fact that there are so many sightings and there are so many people spread out across a wide geographical area who will claim to have seen a bipedal wolf-like creature. But there are a lot of ways to debunk this. You know, you saw a dog, you saw a bear, you saw a wolf. There are a lot of things that could possibly, in the human mind, fit the profile of a bipedal canine creature. But I find this story so interesting because it pops up so frequently throughout human history, throughout literature, throughout folklore. Stories of bipedal canine creatures pop up as far back as the ancient Egyptians. So that's the reason I chose this particular topic for tonight's discussion, because it's just so widespread. It's so deeply inundated in our history. I hope I've spoken to the point, but that's kind of where I'm at.
So I have a question for you. I'm just curious if you found anything like this in your research. So I've seen like videos and reports of like bears walking for a distance on their hind legs. Have there been any reports of like canines doing that? I'm trying to think, and I don't know if I've ever seen any reports like that.
So there are plenty of examples of canine animals walking on their rear legs, either as a trick or as an adapted behavior. And Sarah, the other half of Hey Strangeness, my wife, is a veterinary technician by trade. That's what she does. And she will cite 3 to 4 anecdotal examples whenever I bring this up, trying to convince her that werewolves are real, of dogs that can walk on their rear legs either on command or as an adapted behavior, or purely just, depending on what you believe about the abstract emotions of dogs, purely just for fun. So I think that's entirely possible, if that answers your question.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I honestly had never heard that was a possibility, and that's pretty awesome. So, I mean, it gives me a lot to think about regarding the Beast of Bray Road, and yeah, who knows what we got going on. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts about that, or
yeah, something I've thought about, and you can look this up, do a Google search. black bears with mange. They look pretty freaky anyway. But that's one potential animal that I thought could be mistaken for a dog-man-like creature.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean I've heard that one too, and they truly do look terrifying. Another one I've heard talked about in regards, especially to some of the Minnesota, or I should say the Midwestern, not Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan dogman. A lot of these areas in the Midwest. Obviously, there's a history of people from Germany and Scandinavia settling those areas, cultures that certainly would have had some sort of cultural depictions of werewolves, but the idea
deep werewolf legends in those cultures, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. But wolves from northern Canada, which grow quite large in size, maybe finding their way down into some of these areas, maybe one of those possibilities. I don't know, because the whole dogman thing, I mean, I just had a guy the other day email me about saying he may have seen one in New Hampshire. I don't know, what exactly to make of that, but it seems to differ from the typical werewolf lore. I mean, I've looked into the Rougarou of Louisiana, and that's like more of a classic werewolf. It's a lot of religious overtones. It's like a Cajun werewolf, basically a swamp werewolf. You turn into it, and you take form and change. So it's a little bit different than dogman stuff. But I think maybe even possibility of dire wolves surviving. I don't know. That's one of the things that people suggest. So yeah, it's definitely interesting.
Species that modern science hasn't classified yet because we haven't found modern examples of them, you think? Is that what you mean?
Trying to turn my mic on there. Yeah, I think that's a possibility. Maybe I know people talk about coy wolves.
Oh, Alex, you are not bringing up coy wolves. Are you serious?
I don't know. I mean, it's just there's a lot of there's a lot of room here for all sorts of stuff, and people are scared. A lot of people are scared by dogs. I mean, so wolves are especially terrifying to them. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of room here for maybe mistaken identity, but some people claim to have had experience with a dogman-like creature. So I'm not here to say they did or didn't. I'm just trying to figure out what is going on.
So to explain my reaction, so growing up in New England, the old timers would always tell us little kids stories of coy dogs, and look out for the coy wolves or the coy dogs because they're unstoppable, and they'll get you. And it was kind of like the old wives' tales of when I was growing up. So that's just funny to hear someone else mention that. We'll have to talk about that someday, man.
Yeah, no, that's kind of why I brought it up, because it definitely, growing up in the same area, I've heard that similar kind of story too, because wolves have obviously been extirpated from this area for the most part. I mean, we still get some examples of them trickling across the St. Lawrence down from Canada. It happens from time to time. But coy wolves are pretty terrifying.
Oh, for real.
You mentioned unstoppable wolves, and the first thing that comes to my mind is the early accounts of Skinwalker Ranch, the wolf that was shot with super powerful firearms and didn't really seem to care. I'll be quiet after this. I feel like I've used up my time, but commonalities.
Oh, for sure. Like oh man, there's a tangent we could all get on some other day about the Skinwalker Ranch. Crazy
we got to do a room about
bulletproof wolf. We'll figure out some way how to do it. But Aaron, that was a fantastic discussion. Thank you. Who would you like to go next there, man?
I'm just going to go in order based on what's showing up on my screen and jump to Tate. He's to my right here.
Tate, what do you think? I mean, Tate usually likes to go at the end.
Yeah.
So I don't know if,
oh man. Okay.
No, it's cool. It's cool, man. You're new.
Lisa. I'm just excited to be here, but either Tate or Lisa, they're the next ones on my screen.
I'm happy to do it if Tate wants to wait until last, as always. So I am Lisa. I am from Cryptid Comforts. Those of you not familiar with my work, I make weird little cryptid stuffies and other strange things. I also recently started a podcast called Cryptid Comforts Presents Monsters Under My Bed, and it is a sleep meditation podcast about cryptids. So if you're having trouble falling asleep at night, I'm your girl, and you can follow me on Instagram at cryptid_comforts. And so I totally misunderstood the topic for tonight, and I was thinking it was cryptids who had been written off as an animal, but then that was proven that it couldn't have possibly been what the cryptid was. So I'm going to switch gears and not do what I originally had planned to talk about.
That was what I did all my research on, Lisa. I'm just saying.
Okay, cool.
You're all good, Lisa.
But I have something, because I actually was working on something else that Sarah and I are actually going to be talking at length about on B-List Cryptids with her soon. So I figured I could just go that direction instead and talk about the devil bird of Sri Lanka. So if you guys aren't familiar with the devil bird of Sri Lanka, the story, I'm just going to do a quick overview of the story. Basically, woman and man have a baby. The man decides that he doesn't think the baby is his. He kills the baby. He feeds it to her. She finds out what he's done, and she flees. She turns herself into a bird and flies off. Okay. So now she's living in the jungle in Sri Lanka and constantly screaming. And you can hear, if you're ever in Sri Lanka, you might hear the sounds of a woman screaming. And it's actually a bird. And they have narrowed down what the bird is, but they still haven't pinpointed it. I feel like a couple years ago when I looked into it, they had pinpointed it, but now they're like, I don't know, maybe it's this one, maybe it's this one. Because the people who have seen it have all stated the same thing, that the bird, their description of what it looks like varies a bit, but they said that when it screams, it holds its beak up to the sky and screams. And it sounds like just a devastating, blood-curdling scream. But they believe that it might be the spot-bellied owl. That's like the number one, what they thought it was the first time I researched it. There's a sound clip, which I'm going to find, not tonight, obviously, but of them actually, that was recorded of the bird screaming. It's amazing. It sounds so cool. I played it for my students once. So the spot-bellied owl is what it is believed that this is probably. They said other contenders might be the forest eagle owl or the crested honey buzzard, but they know for sure that the sounds are coming from an actual bird. But the folklore of it is just so much more intriguing. That's all.
That
That's
is
all I got
really,
for you.
really cool. That's a cool story, Lisa.
It's such a good
Yeah.
story, and it's one of those that I really was hesitant when I shared it with my students who are, around 8 years old about,
Sure.
Cannibalism and murder and fun stuff like that. But it's such a good story, and it's so interesting, and the idea that this bird can make that sound, and it sounds so horrific. Of course, there's going to be some fantastic folklore surrounding that sound.
Exactly.
I would love to hear it myself. But I guess it's not something you'll hear every day. Some people who live there say they've only even heard it like 3 times. But you can hear it, and it's creepy.
Oh, man. Thank you.
And if you want to learn more about it, you should check out B-List Cryptids by Sarah.
Totally.
I'm going to be on there soon, and we're going to talk about this crazy devil bird.
Oh, my goodness. I love it.
Yeah.
And when Lisa says that her podcast will put you to sleep, it will, because I tried listening to it this weekend and I fell asleep.
That's
it
the
works.
goal.
100%. It works. So thank you, Lisa, for that.
So yes, please, if you need help sleeping and getting a quality night's sleep, I'm your girl, for real.
No doubt.
My voice on the podcast is much more soothing than it is right now, I assure you. All right, so next up, let's go to Paul.
Hello, everyone. I'm learning a lot. I don't know about everybody else, but everything's been interesting so far. So
can I just throw something out there? Paul is the guy who identified an actual cryptid and discovered it and cataloged it. I just feel that's important to say.
Yes, I'm Paul. I'm a zoologist, and I found a species of turtle that hadn't been seen in over 50 years. So my topic kind of continues on in doing field research for different species of reptiles and also amphibians. I was part of a 6-year-long survey in the Ouachita Mountains, just about 60 miles north of Hot Springs, Arkansas. And we set up these sampling lines, or transects, we call them, across 6 of these watersheds. So we're talking, hundreds of plots set along these transects, up and down mountains, and we would do it all by foot, hiking through these mountains. We'd drop crews off of 2 to 4 people and hike for miles, and then get picked up at the end, or sometimes had to double back. And so we spent a lot of time not on any type of regular hiking trails or paths. We were really just cutting brush through the forest. And in doing that, we came across some interesting things. One of we had been doing this for, I think, about 4 years. And so when we went about 5 times a year and spent 1 to 2 weeks as solid just working in the forest, and you get pretty familiar with the sounds and things that are going on. And this place, as beautiful as it is, it's nothing but logging roads. And we were surveying both U.S. forest land as well as private timber company held property. And really, for the most part, the scariest creatures I came across were human beings. We had one of our crews run across let's just say an illegal farming activity that was going on, and actually had skulls and booby traps, what appeared to be booby traps. Fortunately, nobody had found out, whether they for sure were booby traps. I came across, out in the middle of nowhere, a goat that appeared to have been sacrificed. It was hanging up in a tree, had its throat slit. It was disemboweled, just out in the middle of nowhere. And we would start early in the morning, go till the evening time, and then sometimes we'd even go out at night to do some of our calling amphibian surveys. So after becoming familiar with the species that are in the area, one trip we began hearing this really bizarre sound that none of us had ever heard before. And it sounded, we were kind of freaked out by it, because it sounded very mechanical, and but not the kind of a mechanical or a machine that we were familiar with. And it wasn't like a tractor or a regular vehicle. It wasn't a chainsaw. And we spent days trying to figure out what in the world this sound was. And what was interesting about it is we would just come across it all over the place. But it wasn't like part of there wasn't a whole lot of them. It was just a few at a time. And it seems like there were these lone sounds, and it's like, and we kind of started joking about it being a UFO. And I know UFO wouldn't necessarily be a cryptid, but it was a really freaky sound. And I do have an audio of it here that I'll play. Hopefully the audio comes through.
I would really love to hear it, I'm just saying.
play it one more time. Did that come across all right?
Yeah, that's pretty horrifying sounding.
Very spooky.
That is incredible and terrifying at the same
Absolutely.
time. Sorry for talking
And
over the first time.
that's fine. And, we were too. We most of them were undergraduate college students, and had some field experience, but we had no idea what it was. And eventually we got to consulting people in the area. Somebody made a recording of it and finally found somebody who knew what it was. By the way, I'd like to know, does anybody either up on stage or in the audience have an idea of what it might be?
I know, but I ride around in the car with you all the time, so I'm going to be quiet this time.
I have a small something to corroborate, but I don't want to steal the spotlight. I'm just saying.
Well, it turns out it was the 17-year cicada. And so it's one of the periodic species of cicadas. And if you're from the Midwest or the South, you grow up hearing cicadas all the time, but not like this one. And
Florida.
It was so that's just a normal part of the background, and it didn't sound like any other cicadas, and it was so different that, like I said, we were just really freaked out. And it apparently, if we had heard it in a large swarm, when they actually emerge into a swarm, there's tons of them. They can get up to anywhere from 90 or put out 90 to 100 decibels of sound. We might have been able to pick it out, but apparently these were either very early or anomalous emergence of this 17-year cicada. And the other thing, just as a case of mistaken identity, when a lot of people mention mistaking Bigfoot for all kinds of animals. We've talked about moose, but something in particular in the Watchtower Mountains, also kind of an unexpected thing doing field work, was that we were on one of the transects and we saw this large, dark creature moving through the forest, and we saw it run up this very steep hill that we couldn't believe that an animal could move that fast going up through the hill, but we couldn't really make out what it was. And so later, when we were driving around up towards the top, we saw a group or a herd of wild horses. And so that's something I often wonder, especially about Bigfoot sightings in the Watchtows, is there are wild horses in that area. And they're not like some of the western species, or if people have seen what you think of as Mustangs, they're typically smaller. But these actually were very large horses. And so I'm Paul, and that's all I have.
That's some fascinating stuff, Paul. Thank you for sharing that. That's really cool.
I want to say that I am not entirely convinced that cicadas aren't aliens, and I just wanted to put that out there. Also, I love Hot Springs, Arkansas. If you guys have never been, definitely go sometime.
I grew up in Central Florida, and if cicadas are not aliens, I don't understand anything about anything. So just throwing that out there.
Wow. Well, there you go.
I picked up also. This happened there also. Picked up a green frog, and the whole frog started buzzing, and it kind of like one of those novelty toys, the hand shockers. And come to find out, and I thought I had to think about it for like 5 seconds. What's going on with this frog? And it ended up it had just eaten a cicada, and the cicada was still buzzing inside of it.
That's really gnarly. Yeah, that's
Only you.
That's crazy.
Oh my goodness, I'm so glad that Paul is in our Clubhouse group now. He has a very cool viewpoint on stuff.
100%.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Well, I believe that leaves our friend Tate, right?
Nope, I still didn't go.
Oh my goodness, go for it, my friend.
I'll let Tate take the last one there. So I'm going to pick the Luska, actually. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of this one. It's kind of a weird one. The reason I'm doing it is, I'll basically describe it. It's a sea monster. Well, if you look it up, it's supposed to be half great white shark. That's the upper half of it, and the bottom half is tentacles, so like a squid or a kraken. That's the description of it. And the reason why I even picked it is a few years ago, I got an email from our production company in LA. They wanted to do they're doing this cool program actually on the blue holes of the Bahamas, where I guess Jacques Cousteau's nephew runs a oceanographic institute and conservancy, and was going to work with some pretty interesting folks and try to do a live stream expedition down in a submarine going to the bottom of this blue hole. And basically what these blue holes are is there's a few of them around the world, but the most famous one is in the Bahamas. If you look it up, you'll see this beautiful blue water and then just this dark, deep blue hole. And basically what it is it's either a sinkhole or kind of an underwater cave that sort of forms, and it can go hundreds or thousands of feet deep, even though sometimes it's unknown. And there's a lot of lore associated with these blue holes. They're the lair of monsters, the kraken, all sorts of stuff. And this one in the Bahamas and in other spots has been said to be home of the Luska. So I got asked to kind of talk about that, and I did a bunch of research on it. And I talked to some folks that were involved in marine biology and artists to kind of try and figure out what might be going on here with the Luska. And it was a cool program. But what I ended up my theory of it was, in the ancient world, you had mariners traversing the oceans and exploring much of the world. It was obviously a much different time. There was a lot of folklore, a lot of stories of mer people, mermaids, and mermen, and the kraken, of course, which we know is partially based on a real animal. I mean, you have the giant squid, which is a real creature, actually discovered by Doug Hychek. Filmed by Doug Hychek, one of my buddies, who's also the guy who did Monster Quest and a lot of other great cryptozoology programming. You also have, fantastical descriptions of animals that turned out to be rather mundane, at least now that we know about them. And I have this map on my wall of Iceland, which has it has the map of Iceland, basically a map from, I think, the 1600s, and around it are these horrific-looking creatures in the water. Well, it turns out a lot of these animals are narwhals and whales and stingrays, but they're depicted in such a way that they just look absolutely, hideous and awful and very monster-like. So there was a lot of confusion, perhaps, about what was lurking in the oceans. And kind of the theory that I came up with about the Luska was maybe you had an instance at one point where a giant squid or even a large octopus had come up to the surface. And giant squid don't usually come up to the surface unless they're dying. They tend to be living at great depths because that's the sort of terrain they thrive in. Their bodies are not, very. They live at such a pressure down, at the bottom of the ocean, basically, that their bodies are very gelatinous. So they need that to kind of stay together, so that when they start making it up to the surface, it's when they're dying or they're sick. So that's usually when they wash up, and that's how they've been discovered in some occasions. So perhaps one of these creatures was coming up to the surface, and a great white shark attacked one, or vice versa, and there was a battle, and some unfortunate members of a ship at the time happened to see this, and this spawned the legend of this crazy looking creature, Luska, because biologically it doesn't make sense to have a half shark, half octopus looking creature. So perhaps the Luska is that's the case of mistaken identity. I don't know, but when they did that program and went down to the bottom of the blue hole there in the Bahamas, they didn't find anything mysterious down there, so maybe the Luska was hiding that day. But that's the mistaken identity cryptid I chose, so I thought that was a fun one.
Dude, I totally agree. It's like how many different times have we seen animals, they end up dying while in kind of some form of combat. I know in the LL Bean up in Maine, you have the classic taxidermy of the moose that are, have their antlers together. I believe it's there that I saw that. But yeah, I could totally see that, being like a shark and the squid locked together like that. That's pretty cool, man. Good stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'll let Paul chime in. I'm sure he's got something to say. But giant squids are known to battle sperm whales. I mean, that's something that is burned in my mind. When I was a kid, I lived in New York City when I first came to the United States, and I hate this. I'm not a city person, for those that couldn't guess, but I lived in the city when I was young, and I used to go to the Natural History Museum almost every day, and that's actually where I went. Like an hour before I did this interview, it was in New York for this discovery program, and they have this awesome kind of life-size display of a sperm whale and sort of a giant squid battling, and that just stuck in my mind. So you have these examples of these sort of epic battles that happen underwater, and the ocean's a mysterious place. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind there's tons of species we don't know about that are in there. There possibly could be sea monsters, existing creatures that were thought to be extinct, like the coelacanth. Certainly not shooting that idea down at all. I just think the Luska is a little bit more on the fantastical side of things. So, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to comment that sounds like H.P. Lovecraft nightmare.
That's right, yeah.
Oh my God, Lovecraft. Can I throw a little side note in here? There is a game called Stranded Deep. They don't pay me anything. This is not an advertisement. But you fight a boss called the Luska, which, based on my Googling, appears to be just a giant squid. It doesn't have a shark face. But this creature is making appearances in modern media. I thought that was worth pointing out.
That's pretty awesome. That's cool, dude.
Well, I guess I'm going to have to pick Tate.
You're too kind, sir. I didn't really have anything either. I can do like mistaken evidence.
Go for it, dude.
So with Bigfoot, a lot of people will, you can be looking. If you're not familiar with tracks, I don't know if anybody's talked about this yet already, but sometimes you'll see a track and it looks like a Bigfoot track, but if you look closer, you might see two prints in the same track, and that could be a bear double stepping, which will actually give the track more length, causing it to, be misconstrued as a Bigfoot track. So that's one thing that gets, misidentified a lot when tracking. Also, barred owls. Those can, you can be fooled by barred owls because they'll sound like Bigfoot sometimes. Pretty much any animal that does a lot of vocalizations at night or even during the day, you can easily not know what it is and mistake it for a Bigfoot if you got Bigfoot on the brain, especially.
Totally, yeah. The barred owl is a great example. I mean, they make like a monkey-ish sound almost. They can do hoots, whoo, whoo. But the most typical sound they make is it's like whoo, 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 whoo. So a lot of people say it sounds like who cooked the food. So just cool to familiarize yourself with sounds of the forest, and animals can make noises that you would never expect them to, and that's what's so interesting about leaving audio recorders out, or even trail cameras if they have audio capability. You can get video or audio of some crazy sounds, especially during mating season or other times of year that may not be sounds that people are used to hearing. So it can even throw off some pretty well versed folks. So it's always fun with nature to try and figure out what's going on.
Absolutely. I don't know how many times I've been out in the woods at nighttime, and I know immediately what it is, but I can't help but be freaked out by a white-tailed deer huffing before it takes off, just exploding through the brush.
Oh yeah, or I think we were talking about this in another room of the ruffed grouse. I don't know if you've ever been hiking on the Appalachian Trail and you come you walk by a rough grouse and they just explode out of the leaves and you about have a heart attack. It's the
that might have been me talking about that. I've had that happen multiple times hiking in the White Mountains in New Hampshire, and one of them especially, I'll never forget. My friend and I were coming off of like a 12-mile day hike, and we were just exhausted, and we took a different trail route down, and it was starting to get dark, and all of a sudden this ruffed grouse just kind of jumps out, and they do this sort of noise, and it's like a winding up. It's like, and it just goes to I can't even emulate it, and it just, in the moment, it scares you absolutely. We both jumped and we're like, oh my god, what is that? And you realize what it is instantly, but it happens so fast. I've had that happen another time while out Bigfooting, actually, just heading out to a spot and you're having one in front of you, and your mind immediately is like, oh my god, what? And then you kind of realize what it is. But they're pretty great. They're very cool. Look them up. They're a cool looking bird.
For sure. I'm gonna do a last chance call for any final thoughts before we start to wind down the room, and I'll do my kind of closeout section. But just want to make sure no one else had any final thoughts before we wind down the room tonight.
I almost forgot about the most important one, Jeremiah.
All right, go for
the
it.
Chipmunk. How many people in the woods, can ask Aleks how big those things sound when you're out there and it's just a chipmunk or a tree rat?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Just an example. I mean, not even necessarily chipmunk, but last week, I think last Wednesday, I was out in the woods and in this spot where I've had some interesting stuff happen. Let's put it that way. My brother and I are out there at night. I have my FLIR, and we're being surrounded by something. Basically, we have these large noises on either side, and I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, there are bear and moose. I just got a moose in that area on my trail camera. So I'm thinking, oh man, and it turned out to be a family of porcupines. We had 2 adult porcupines, the mom and the dad and the baby, and I actually got them on FLIR as well. I could see the baby kind of running around, which is cool. But, especially at night, you're out there, adrenaline's going, something starts, moving around. It can sound a lot bigger, so it's always important to stay calm and try and figure out what it is before freaking out or reacting adversely. But nature can be quite deceptive in that way, so it's interesting.
For sure. Paul, go ahead.
All right, I just finished up with saying that one other animal, real quick, that I've heard sounds like a tree knock is when a fish will jump, and sometimes they slap the water, and it does kind of sound like a knock. But other than that, I think it's just important to realize that the more you go out into the woods or out into nature, the more you're going to hear rare things, or your chances are of hearing rare things. And the cicada example, the only other opportunity I would have had to have heard that as 17-year cicada, I would have been 15 years old. And so, I think it's important to do your very best to try to figure out and eliminate things, when you hear things or you see things, before you just automatically say, oh, it was Bigfoot or it was Champ or whatever cryptid you're looking for.
That's some good advice. Thank you, Paul. This has been a really good room tonight. Thank you all for coming on in and having a good discussion about mistaken identity cryptids. There's a lot of great people down in the audience as well. Thank you for hanging out with us and those that are listening on YouTube and the podcast. I just want to say, if you're down in the audience and this is your first room on Clubhouse hanging out with us, thank you for hanging out with us. And also, tap Bigfoot Society up at the top of your screen in the left-hand corner, and then tap follow so that you don't miss out on any other rooms. A lot of cool content that comes through this club. Greg is leading Cryptocasters tomorrow, and that's going to be kind of cool. He's going to put an interesting spin on, we're going to have like cryptids in outer space. Greg has some stuff up his sleeves. I'm not gonna say it, but it's cool. It's cool. Room. Yeah, it's gonna be good. So hopefully see you there. Also, for those that are listening and not in the room, go to @Bigfoot Society on Instagram. And if you want to join Clubhouse, send me a DM. I can get you an invite into the platform. But also the club link so you can join this club is in my link tree in my Instagram profile. But again, thanks so much all for hanging out with me tonight. We had a great discussion. I'm going to go ahead and shut down the room at this time, and we'll be talking to you all later. Have a good one, all.
See you later, guys.